Welcome to Talk Tickers. Today, we are diving deep into Central Puerto Rico's third quarter 2025 earnings call. Now, the company posted some absolutely monster numbers, but the market's reaction? Well, that's where the story gets really interesting. Let's get into it.
So here's the plan. We're going to start with those blowout results. Then we'll peel back the layers and see what's actually driving them. After that, we'll look at what management is saying about some game-changing reforms, and I'll wrap it all up with our take on what to look for next.
And this really gets us to the heart of the matter, the central puzzle of this quarter. How on earth does a company crush earnings estimates by over 300% only to see its stock just sit there and finish the day totally flat? That's the real story we're going to figure out today.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, the big beat. And honestly, there's just no other way you can describe these headline numbers. It was a blowout, plain and simple. So the number that just jumped off the page was this one. A more than 300% beat on earnings per share versus what analysts were expecting. I mean, this wasn't just a beat, they absolutely smashed expectations.
And, the momentum in the actual business was just as strong. Quarter over quarter, their adjusted EBITDA shot up by a massive 64%. That shows some serious power in the underlying operations.
All right, so this table really lays it all out for us. You can see the revenue beat of over 11%, which is, that's really solid. But just look at that EPS line, 930 pesos when the street was looking for 226. That is just incredible. The company was clearly firing on all cylinders.
So, the obvious question is, how did they do it? Where did this incredible performance actually come from? Let's get behind the numbers and look at the key drivers, including a reform that pretty much changes the entire game.
Operationally, it was a picture-perfect quarter. They were getting better prices, they successfully passed on their fuel costs, and maybe, most importantly, their plants were just running like a dream. We're talking 88% availability for their thermal plants and a whopping 96% for their most efficient units. Oh, and on top of all that, their new solar farm started pitching into the bottom line.
But the single most important factor for the long term is this right here, Resolution 400. And listen, this isn't just some small regulatory change. No, this is a fundamental shift in Argentina's power market, and it's a massive, massive catalyst for Central Puerto going forward.
So here's why this is such a huge deal for their whole business model. First, revenues are now in US dollars. That takes a ton of currency and inflation risk right off the table. Second, the new rules basically guarantee them a profit margin on top of their costs. And third, it opens up a totally new way for them to make money, selling power directly to big industrial companies.
And that big regulatory change leads us perfectly into our next section, management's view on the future. How do they actually see all of this translating into real bottom-line earnings power?
Well, management was surprisingly direct about it on the call. They basically guided for a 20 to 25% increase in their annual EBITDA just from this reform alone. We're talking a $70 to $80 million lift. And remember, that's before they even start signing any of those new direct sales deals.
This chart does a great job of showing what a step change this is for their earnings. So you start with their existing business, making about $317 million in adjusted EBITDA. Then you layer on that $75 million boost from Resolution 400. And then on top of that, you've got almost $70 million more coming from new projects. It just creates a fundamentally higher, more profitable platform for them.
Which brings us all the way back to that first question, why did the stock go nowhere? Well, the slide right here is the answer. In the 3 months leading up to this earnings report, the stock had already rocketed up 85%. It left the broader Argentine market in the dust and absolutely crushed other utility stocks. So the market wasn't surprised by the good news. It seems it had already priced most of it in.
All right, let's bring it all home with our final section, the next call. This is our thesis on what to expect and where we think Central Puerto is headed from here.
So, in the fourth quarter report, we fully expect to see the first real financial benefits from Resolution 400. But after a run like the one it's had, we think the stock is probably going to trade sideways for a bit as the market digests everything. The key thing to watch for, the real catalyst, will be any news about them locking in those direct sales contracts. And through it all, their balance sheet is a rock. With super low net leverage, they have a ton of flexibility.
So when you put it all together, our rating on Central Puerto is outperform. And yes, the stock has had a monster run, and a lot of the good news might be out. But we think this structural shift in their earnings power is a tailwind that's going to last for years. Moving to a dollarized, higher margin business model is a huge de-risking event. And that, for us,
justifies the positive outlook.
This is not financial advice.